Life rushes by quickly. We rise each day, dive into routines, chase dreams, answer messages, and handle duties. Before we even realize, another year has slipped away, another birthday, another chapter. But have you ever paused for just a second and wondered, am I truly living the life I dream of, or am I simply existing? This message is your call to awaken. We often avoid thinking about death. It's uneasy, it feels far away. But for those who are standing at life's edge, the picture becomes crystal clear. They recognize what really matters and what doesn't. That's why the words of the dying carry such weight. These are individuals who have reached the final stretch and have no reason to pretend, impress anyone, or chase anything anymore. They speak from a place of deep honesty, from their soul. And their message is straightforward. Don't waste your life. This video isn't about fear. It's not about sorrow. It's about truth, insight, and renewal. It's about hearing what genuinely counts, directly from those who have lived it. We'll uncover the most common regrets, the moments people value the most, and the wisdom they wish they could pass to their younger selves. We exist in a world filled with distractions, social media, the race for success, endless comparisons. But deep inside, our soul longs for something real, for connection, for purpose, for calm. And every now and then we need to stop. We need a message that stirs us, wakes us up, and reminds us. This life is yours, but it won't last forever. What will you do with it? As you listen to this journey, keep your heart wide open. Let every word settle within you. Picture someone you love sitting across from you, sharing their final reflections. What they wish they had done more of, what they wish they had released, and what truly made them happy. Because one day, we'll all reach that hour. And when that time comes, let's not look back with regret. Let's look back with peace, knowing we truly lived. So inhale deeply, open your spirit. This is the wake-up call you didn't even realize you needed. Regret number 1. I wish I hadn't worked so much. This regret hits deeply for countless individuals. Men, women, young, old, it makes no difference. In the end, it's not the late nights at the office or the awards on the wall that people remember. It's the moments they missed. The moments they can never reclaim. The quiet meals that never happened. The soccer matches they missed. The bedtime tales they rushed or skipped entirely. The anniversaries spent apart. All for what? A fatter paycheck? A shinier car? Approval from people who barely knew them? And here's the reality. Not a single person on their deathbed has ever said, I wish I had spent more time at work. John's story, as shared by Nurse Bronnie Ware. While in Bronnie Ware's care, there was a man named John, a retired attorney. He was proud of his success. He had made partner at a renowned firm, provided for his loved ones, and owned a beautiful home. But when he became ill and his time grew short, his pride shifted into something bittersweet. John told Bronnie one afternoon, I was constantly chasing the next goal. First, it was law school. Then getting a job, then making partner, then retiring with enough to live comfortably. I kept thinking, just a few more years, just one more achievement, and then I'll enjoy my life. He stopped and whispered, but now there's nothing left to chase, and I can hardly remember what I was chasing. His children were grown, with lives of their own. His wife, who had waited for him through years of endless hours, now sat by his bed, holding his hand as he wept quietly. A hospice nurse in Toronto named Lena shared a story in a caregiver's diary about a woman whose husband had recently passed away. He had been a senior engineer at a big firm, always working overtime, always traveling. He was a good man, but he was married to his job, as his wife said. After his death, she sat with Lena, holding a photo from their wedding, and whispered, He was the love of my life, but I spent more evenings eating alone than with him. I adapted, but I never stopped aching for him. He said he did it all for us, but what we truly needed was him. That sentence haunted Lena. What we truly needed was him. Overworking doesn't always appear dangerous. In fact, it often feels like the right thing to do, especially for parents trying to provide or people struggling to survive. It's praised, admired, expected. But what's often hidden is the silent damage it creates at home. Kids grow up fast. One minute you're changing diapers, the next you're helping them pack for college. And between all the deadlines and meetings, those precious years vanish like smoke. Regret number 2. I wish I had allowed myself to be happier. One of the most painful lessons shared by individuals in their final moments is this: they could have been far happier, but they didn't allow it. Not because everything was easy, not because life always treated them kindly, but because they waited for happiness to come from the outside, from wealth, from achievements, from people acting a certain way. They waited for a reason to feel joy, and for many, that reason never came. What they finally realized was that happiness had always been available. It just wasn't something they gave themselves. Bronnie Ware once cared for a woman named Grace, who had spent her life as a dedicated wife and mother. Grace told Bronnie, "I thought putting myself last was the right thing. I thought hardship made me stronger, but I never let myself enjoy the things I loved. I was always too overwhelmed, too exhausted, too guilty." As Grace lay in her last days, she understood something heartbreakingly simple. Joy had always been waiting. She just didn't believe she deserved it. Happiness doesn't always arrive in huge, glittering packages. It lives in the little things: sitting with a warm drink in silence, laughing at a ridiculous joke, dancing in the living room, watching the sunset change hues. But many people like Grace didn't slow down enough to experience it. They were too focused on what they should be doing, too afraid of being judged, too trapped by seriousness. Some even believed that being joyful made them irresponsible or careless. And so they waited for retirement, for their children to leave home, for a quiet moment, or someone else to make them happy. But none of those things guaranteed joy, because happiness isn't something that happens to you. It's something you give yourself permission to feel. Thomas, a retired machinist in his 90s, entered hospice care after fighting cancer. He was quiet, respectful, and always courteous, but he seemed burdened. Even during peaceful moments, there was a sadness behind his gaze. His nurse, Elena, would often sit beside him and ask about his past. One afternoon, Thomas said something that stayed with her. "I never let myself be goofy, never danced, never joked around. I thought I had to be serious all the time. Now I'd give anything to feel that lightness I see in others, even just once." Elena asked if he could remember laughing without fear. Thomas smiled weakly. "Once when I was young, my friends and I got caught in a storm and raced through the streets like idiots. I laughed so hard I couldn't catch my breath. I didn't care who was watching. That was the last time I remember feeling that free." That memory was over 60 years old, and even now, it remained the happiest he could summon. Regret number 3. I wish I had said I love you more. It's one of the simplest things we can express, yet one of the hardest. I love you. 3 words that carry more meaning than we understand, yet so many people find them difficult to say. Sometimes it's pride that holds us back. Sometimes it's fear, fear of being open, fear of being judged, or even fear of being too late. But the truth is, by the time we're approaching the end of our lives, we realize just how much we wish we'd spoken those words more freely. And more importantly, how much we wish we had demonstrated love more too. Many people on their deathbeds say, "I wish I had said I love you more." Not only because they wanted to hear it themselves, but because they wished they had offered it more generously, without hesitation or fear. A hospice nurse named Sarah Goodwill once cared for a man named Michael, who had spent most of his life being a tough guy. He was a father, a husband, a man of few words. He loved his family deeply, but he rarely expressed it the way they needed to hear. He believed his actions would speak louder than his words. But as Michael lay on his deathbed, surrounded by family, he started to regret the quiet. He kept looking at his wife, who had stood beside him through everything, and his children, who had grown up and moved away. He'd given them all he could, but those words, "I love you," never seemed to come naturally. One afternoon, Sarah was sitting by Michael's side when he whispered, "I should have said it more. I should have told them every day. They needed to hear it." He let out a soft, regretful breath and continued, "I thought they knew, but they needed to hear the words." Michael passed away shortly after, and his wife and children said they had never felt closer to him than in those final moments when he finally said, "I love you," but only after realizing how much he had kept inside. The Walls of Pride. Dr. Ira Byock's insight. Dr. Ira Byock, a well-known palliative care expert, often speaks of the emotional burden that comes with deathbed regrets. One of the most common, he says, is the wish to have said, "I love you more." Many patients, particularly men from earlier generations, were raised in cultures that didn't always encourage open expressions of affection. They were taught to show love through actions, through providing and safeguarding. But in the end, Dr. Bioch observes, what people need more than anything is to hear those words. It's not the things you do, but the words you say that leave an imprint on a person's heart. In his book, The 4 Things That Matter Most, Dr. Bioch highlights saying, I love you, as one of the essential things we can do for those we cherish. He says that the regret of not speaking these words often haunts people in their final days. By the time they realize the importance of saying them, it's too late to turn back. Emma's story, the unspoken love. Emma was a woman in her late 70s, nearing the end of her life, when she opened up to her hospice nurse, Lily. Emma had been married to her husband Thomas for over 50 years. They had built a life together, raising children, traveling, and supporting each other through the ups and downs. But in all their decades together, Emma realized that she had never once told Thomas she loved him the way she truly meant it. We didn't need to say it, Emma said. We just knew it. I always thought there would be time for that, time for us to share everything we hadn't said yet. But now, as her strength declined, the words seemed to be trapped in her chest. She said, I should have said it more. I should have whispered it more, shown him in every way possible that I loved him. I didn't need to wait. Emma was devastated at the thought that she would never be able to speak those words to Thomas again. And yet, in a moment of clarity, she made one last effort. She asked Lily if she could write a letter to her husband, something she could leave behind. In that letter, Emma wrote, Thomas, I love you more than I ever said. You were my everything, and I regret not telling you more often how much you meant to me. Lily helped her write it, and Emma was able to send Thomas a final, heartfelt message of love, even if she couldn't say it aloud anymore. The heavy silence of regret. At the end of life, there is nothing quite like the weight of unspoken emotions. I love you isn't just a phrase, it's an emotional anchor. It holds the power to heal divisions, to build bridges, and to bring comfort when everything else feels uncertain. One woman in her final hours spoke to her daughter about a conversation she had never had. She said, I always wanted to tell your father how much I loved him, but I thought it was too late. I didn't want to seem foolish. As she continued, she added, I never thought I would regret the things I didn't say, but now I do. Her daughter, who had always known her mother's love, nodded with quiet understanding, but there was still a sadness in her heart. She wished they had both allowed themselves to say those words more often, even when it didn't feel necessary. The healing power of saying, I love you. The truth is, saying I love you is never a wasted effort. Whether it's to a partner, a child, a parent, or a friend, those words matter. They matter because they remind people of their value. They remind us of our shared bond, our shared humanity. And when we don't say them, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to give and receive love completely. One of the most powerful gifts you can offer someone you care about is to let them know you love them, often, deeply, and without hesitation. It's never too late. If there's someone in your life who needs to hear it, take the chance now. Don't wait until it's too late to express what's in your heart. The hospice workers, the caregivers, and the doctors who have sat by the bedsides of the dying all share the same lesson. I love you is a phrase we often overlook. But for many, it's the one thing they wish they had said more. It's the one thing that can never be spoken too much. So right now, think of the people you love. Don't let fear or pride hold you back. Call them, text them, write them a letter, and say the words, I love you, because one day you might wish you had said them more. Regret number 4. I wish I had forgiven sooner. Forgiveness is a precious gift we extend not only to others but also to ourselves. Yet, it often proves far more difficult than it seems. Clinging to anger, bitterness, and resentment can feel like a form of protection, shielding us from deeper wounds or betrayals. However, the reality is that it only inflicts harm upon ourselves. It's akin to drinking poison while hoping another suffers the consequence. By nursing old injuries, we allow the past to govern both our present and our future. As individuals near the close of their lives, many reflect with sorrow, wishing they had embraced forgiveness earlier, not solely for others' sake, but for their own inner peace. They come to see that harboring anger altered nothing from the past. It merely intensified their own suffering. Maria's story, the burden of unresolved pain. Maria, a woman in her mid-70s, spent her final days in a hospice care center. She was surrounded by a devoted family, with children and grandchildren who adored her. Yet she had remained estranged from her sister Joanne, following a bitter dispute that occurred over 20 years earlier. The quarrel had stemmed from a simple misunderstanding, one that neither of them had ever tried to fully heal. For decades, Maria carried her resentment like a heavy cloak. Whenever Joanne's name arose, Maria would dismiss it with a curt remark or a cold laugh. She convinced herself she had been justified, that Joanne had wronged her first. But as Maria's health deteriorated, the burden of that lingering conflict grew heavier than the physical pain she endured. One afternoon, she confided in her hospice nurse, Rachel, saying, "I've carried this anger for so long. I never realized how deeply it's affected me. All the years I've wasted being mad at her. I should have forgiven her long ago, but my pride wouldn't let me." Rachel listened quietly as Maria continued. "It wasn't just her I wounded, it was myself. I let anger consume me, and it stole my peace. I regret not reaching out, not letting go when I had the chance." Sadly, by the time Maria reached this understanding, Joanne had already passed away. The opportunity for reconciliation had vanished. Maria's sorrow wasn't only about losing her sister, it was about all the years of love and connection lost because of a grudge that in the end meant little. The emotional toll of resentment. Dr. Ira Byock's perspective. Dr. Byock often conveys a simple truth. Clutching anger is like dragging a heavy stone. It exhausts you. The longer you carry it, the harder it is to set down. But the instant you choose forgiveness, you liberate yourself. Through his years of experience, Dr. Byock has seen many patients, particularly those battling terminal illnesses, come to realize that forgiveness is often the key to emotional liberation in their final days. Whether forgiving a parent, a spouse, or an old friend, taking that step often marked the beginning of real peace. One of his patients, George, was in his late 60s when he was diagnosed with advanced cancer. He had been estranged from his son for more than a decade due to a family business dispute. For years, George clung to the belief that he had been wronged, that his son had betrayed him. Yet, as his end approached, George had an awakening. "I've punished myself more than anyone else. I was furious, and for what? He's my son. I let all this time slip away." With Dr. Byock's encouragement, George composed a letter to his son, seeking forgiveness for the years spent apart. It wasn't effortless, but it opened a door to healing. By the time George passed, he had reclaimed a measure of peace through the power of forgiveness, even though a full reconciliation hadn't occurred. The healing power of forgiveness. A nurse's reflection. Sandra, a compassionate hospice nurse, cared for an elderly man named Henry, who had carried resentment toward his father for most of his life. Henry's father had been cold, emotionally distant, and their relationship remained fractured for decades. As a result, Henry bore the scars of feeling unloved, and that pain shadowed his marriage and his relationships with his own children. In his final days, however, Sandra noticed a profound shift within him. One afternoon, during a quiet conversation, Henry confessed, "I spent my entire life angry at him. I thought it made me stronger, but all it did was prevent me from ever feeling truly loved." Sandra gently asked, "What would it take for you to forgive him?" Henry's expression softened as he considered her question. "I think I spent so long being angry that I forgot how to love. I wish I had forgiven him sooner. I could have lived differently." Sandra encouraged Henry to share this revelation with his children, to unburden himself before it was too late. That same day, Henry spoke openly with them, acknowledging the hurt he carried and the deep regret he felt for withholding forgiveness. In those final moments, Henry found serenity, having finally laid down the anger that had weighed on his heart for a lifetime. The silent damage of grudges. Many fail to realize the true extent to which holding on to anger affects not only our hearts but our bodies. Resentment, bitterness, and unforgiveness elevate stress, heighten anxiety, and even contribute to chronic illnesses. Emotional wounds lodge themselves within us in ways that often remain unseen. As people near life's end, they frequently gaze backward with profound sadness, mourning the fractured relationships they allowed to remain broken. Often they come to understand that the individuals they were furious with may not have even known the depth of the pain they caused, and that the only one truly suffering was themselves. The liberating power of letting go. Forgiveness does not imply excusing hurtful actions, nor does it necessitate reconciliation. It is not about validating the other person. It's about releasing yourself. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of past wounds and reclaiming your present life. One final story from Lily, a hospice nurse, encapsulates this truth. Lily cared for a woman named Jean, who had carried resentment toward a former friend for years. On her deathbed, Jean finally admitted, "I held on to that anger for so long, but now I see I only wasted my life. It's time to release it, not for her, but for me. I want to leave this life in peace." If you find yourself clutching a grudge, nursing old wounds, or harboring unforgiveness, let this serve as your invitation to let it go. You may never receive the apology you long for, and closure may never come, but you can still choose forgiveness, for your sake. The peace you seek already resides within you. It's never too late to forgive, to unburden yourself from the past, and to discover the freedom that forgiveness offers. As many who faced life's final chapter have said, forgiving sooner would have brought them the peace they spent a lifetime yearning for. Regret number 5. I wish I had lived true to myself, not just fulfilled what others expected of me. This regret surfaces more than any other. It doesn't matter where the individual came from, how much wealth they accumulated, or what kind of existence they led. This longing echoes repeatedly through the quiet halls of hospice care. As life nears its end, people whisper it with voices weathered by age and sorrow. I wish I had lived my own life. Let that truly sink in. They aren't lamenting, I wish I had accomplished more. They are mourning, I wish I had been true to myself. Grace's story, as recounted by nurse Bronnie Ware. One of the most recognized voices in this conversation is Bronnie Ware, an Australian palliative care nurse. After years of tending to dying patients, she compiled her experiences in a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. In it, she shares numerous stories, including that of a woman named Grace. Grace, in her 70s, was succumbing to a lengthy illness. Throughout her life, she had been known as the good girl. She married young, raised a family, and devoted herself to ensuring everyone else's happiness. She was courteous, reserved, and compliant. Her husband made all the important decisions. Her children were her world. Her parents' hopes dictated her choices. Yet deep inside, Grace had yearned to be an artist. She adored painting. She dreamed of living by the sea, surrounded by the beauty of canvas and color. But she never allowed herself the freedom. In her final days, she confided to Bronnie, I always lived according to others' expectations. I never even paused to ask myself what I truly wanted. There was no bitterness in her tone, only profound sadness tinged with disbelief. She had spent her life living for everyone else, and now there was no time left to reclaim it. Thomas's story, as shared by Dr. Catherine Mannix. Catherine Mannix, a British palliative care specialist, chronicled her decades of sitting with the dying in her book, With the End in Mind. Among the many accounts she shares is that of Thomas, a man who spent his life entrenched in finance, a career that paid well but drained his soul. Thomas had always loved working with his hands. He had dreamed of becoming a carpenter, building things that would endure. But he was told that such a path was not successful enough. So, he wore the suit, worked 10-hour days, and provided for his loved ones. When retirement finally came, instead of finding rest, he fell ill. In those final weeks, he said something Dr. Mannix never forgot. I did everything they said would make me happy, but I never felt it. I kept waiting for the moment I'd feel proud of myself. It never arrived. His voice cracked as he spoke, not from anger, but from sheer exhaustion with pretending. Maya's story, told by hospice worker Christine Longacre. Christine Longacre, who devoted decades to end-of-life care and grief counseling, shared the story of Maya, a woman in her 50s who succumbed to breast cancer. Maya was strong, always smiling, always saying the right thing, and never complaining. But as her body weakened, so too did the mask she had worn for much of her life. One afternoon, gazing out the window, Maya whispered, I don't even know who I truly am. I've spent my life being everything everyone else needed. My parents' daughter, my husband's wife, my children's mother. But what about me? That confession struck Christine deeply. Maya had checked every box: marriage, motherhood, professional success, but in her final days, all she craved was to meet the person she might have been. Tragically, she never granted herself that chance while time was still on her side. The heavy weight of should. There is a quiet thief that steals life away, and its name is should. I should get a stable career. I should marry someone my family approves of. I should stay silent. I should be thankful for what I have. People live chained to should until they no longer recognize their own desires. Then one day they realize they have spent years or an entire lifetime wearing someone else's dreams, walking a path that was never truly theirs. The most painful part? Many of these individuals were not overtly unhappy. They were simply numb. They adapted to not wanting more. But as the noise of daily life fades at the end, the raw truth emerges. They had abandoned themselves. Regret number 6. I wish I had traveled more. In the final moments of life, many people reflect and wish they had embraced more experiences. One of the most recurring regrets voiced is that they didn't travel as much as they had longed to. Yet it's not just the grand, luxurious vacations they mourn. They regret not exploring unfamiliar places, not meeting diverse people, not immersing themselves in different corners of the world. For some, it remained an unfulfilled dream. For others, it was the painful realization that the opportunity had existed, yet they failed to seize it. For many, traveling transcends sightseeing or escaping daily life. It's about expanding one's perspective, understanding diverse cultures, and experiencing the marvels of existence beyond the comfort of familiar surroundings. Yet fear, financial constraints, or the endless demands of daily life often prevent people from taking that leap. And in their final reflections, they wish fervently that they had. Joan, a woman in her late 70s, spent her life devoted to her career as a schoolteacher. She had always dreamed of seeing Europe, strolling the romantic streets of Paris, marveling at the ancient ruins of Rome, and drifting along the canals of Venice. But life, as it often does, intervened. First came her professional commitments, then the demands of raising children, and later the responsibilities of being a grandmother. Speaking with her hospice nurse Maggie, Joan admitted, "I dedicated my whole life to hard work, always telling myself I would travel once I retired. But I waited too long. Now I see I didn't have to. I could have made it happen years ago, even with the children. I was simply too focused on everything else." Joan's deepest regret was not about missing extravagant vacations. It was about putting dreams on hold, always assuming there would be a perfect time. As her health declined, she found herself grieving the places she would now never explore, yearning for the freedom to discover the world and feeling the sorrow of lost chances. Mark, a man in his early 60s, had lived a safe, comfortable life within his hometown. He harbored dreams of seeing the Great Wall of China or embarking on a long road trip across America. Yet the fear of the unknown, along with his deep attachment to routine, anchored him firmly at home. Speaking to his nurse, Linda, Mark said, "I've always been a creature of comfort. I never truly wanted to leave what I knew. But now I realize how much I missed. I should have challenged myself to see more of the world." As his health deteriorated, Mark began to mourn the adventures he had let slip away. Fear had cost him a fuller, richer life. He had seldom ventured beyond his own familiar world. And now, faced with the finality of life, he confessed, "You don't realize how much you missed until you have no time left." Anna, a woman in her late 80s, had led a life rich with exploration and wonder. She made it a point to travel extensively, whether it was trekking through South America or scaling the mountains of Nepal. In her final reflections, Anna spoke joyfully about how much those journeys had shaped her. Speaking to her daughter, Anna said, "Every place I visited, every culture I embraced, transformed me. It made me see life's beauty in a way I never could have from home. Travel opened my heart. It taught me to find wonder in people, nature, and existence itself. I don't regret anything I did. I only wish I had begun sooner." Even though Anna had traveled far and wide, she still felt a pang for the corners of the world left unseen. Reflecting back, she recognized just how deeply every new place had enriched her spirit. Dr. Ira Byock often notes that many of his patients express profound regret over not traveling more. He believes that travel is one of the most transformative experiences a human being can have. Beyond providing a break from life's routines, it broadens understanding, fosters compassion, and creates memories that linger long after the moment has passed. He recounts the story of a patient named Lily, who had spent her entire life in a small town, never venturing far. Lily confided, "I never believed someone like me could travel. I thought life was supposed to stay small. But now, near the end, I wish I had seen more of the world. I miss something important, something I can't quite put into words." Dr. Bioch emphasizes that Lily's feelings mirror those of countless others. The sorrow isn't merely for missed destinations, but for lost possibilities. The relationships, the experiences, the wisdom they never had the chance to embrace. It's easy to see why many people choose not to travel. Comfort breeds familiarity, and familiarity brings a sense of safety. Leaving behind the known for the uncertainty of new places can feel overwhelming. The security of home, family, and routine builds invisible walls that seem insurmountable. Rachel, a hospice nurse, shared the story of a patient named Tom. Tom had lived his entire life in the same small town, holding on to dreams of travel he never acted upon. "I kept telling myself I'd go someday," Tom told Rachel, "but someday never arrived, and now I sit here surrounded by what-ifs." Tom's regret wasn't only about missed travels, it was about a life half-lived. His dreams of seeing the world were tied to a deeper yearning, to live boldly, to step outside the ordinary. But the pull of routine had held him captive, and now it was the weight of unrealized dreams that pressed most heavily on his spirit. The truth is, the ability to explore is within reach for many, if we choose to prioritize it. You don't need to wait for the perfect time. Travel doesn't always mean an extravagant journey around the globe. It could be as simple as a weekend getaway or a road trip to a neighboring city. The world is vast, vibrant, and waiting to be discovered. If there is one lesson to draw from these voices, it's this: life is fleeting, and the world is too wide and beautiful to spend it standing still. Fear and routine may whisper reasons to stay, but adventure calls louder. So take the trip, whether it's across continents or just across town. Immerse yourself in new cultures, form new connections, and allow the world to shape you in ways you could never imagine. Life itself is the grandest journey, and it's never too late to start traveling. Regret number 7. I wish I had spent more time in nature. As life draws to a close, many individuals find themselves reflecting on the choices they wish they had made differently. A frequent regret voiced by those approaching the end of their journey is that they did not dedicate more time to being in nature. Amid the hectic pace of contemporary existence, many people become so engrossed in work, technology, and obligations that they overlook the importance of stepping outdoors, inhaling the fresh air, and embracing the splendor of the natural world. Confronted with the finality of their days, they often recognize how much tranquility, insight, and happiness nature could have bestowed. The gentle sway of branches, the soft gurgle of a stream, the vast openness of the sky, these simple grounding moments are frequently overlooked. Yet, for those who lived much of their lives detached from nature, the absence becomes strikingly painful. They yearn for the moments lost, the serene time they might have spent with the earth, the precious chance to slow down and simply exist. John's regret: the corporate life and the nature he overlooked. John, an entrepreneur in his 70s, had invested his entire career in building a thriving enterprise. His life was a whirlwind, perpetually busy. The notion of setting aside time to enjoy nature seemed like an unnecessary indulgence, something that didn't align with his crowded agenda. He often promised himself he would go hiking someday or spend a weekend by the ocean, but someday always became another day. As John's health declined, he began reassessing his life. His hospice nurse, Grace, recalled an afternoon conversation where John admitted, "I spent countless years behind a desk on endless calls, sitting in meetings. I always thought I'd eventually make time for the outdoors, but I kept postponing it. Now, in hindsight, I see I should have spent more afternoons in the woods, by the riverside, or just outdoors, soaking up the sun. It would have grounded me, helped me clear my mind." John's regret was not about missing lavish vacations. It was about not carving out space for the simple, profound joy of connecting with nature. The grandeur of trees, the calm of lakes, and the comfort of simply being outdoors became the things he missed most as his time dwindled. Linda, a woman nearing her 70s, had always held a deep appreciation for nature. She loved strolling through parks, sitting quietly by the water, and admiring sunsets from her backyard. However, as life's demands, raising a family, keeping up a home, managing a career, grew heavier, her connection to nature was gradually pushed aside. Linda shared her feelings with her hospice nurse, Emma, during their frequent conversations. "I used to walk in the woods every Saturday. It was my sanctuary, my time to think, to feel connected to the world around me. It brought me peace, but eventually I let other priorities take over." Linda went on to express how, as her end drew near, she wished she had safeguarded those peaceful times in nature. "The serenity I found outdoors was something I completely undervalued. Now I would give anything to sit beneath a tree, feel the breeze on my face, and breathe the pure air. Nature was always patiently there, but I didn't make it a priority." Linda's story is a potent reminder that nature is more than a place to unwind. It is a source of healing. The sights, sounds, and rhythms of nature hold an extraordinary power to soothe and restore the spirit. Yet many neglect it until it is too late. Dr. Ira Byock on the healing power of nature. Dr. Ira Byock recollects one particular patient, Hannah, a woman in her 80s, who reminisced about how much she missed the quiet moments she once enjoyed outdoors. "When I was younger, I loved wandering through the woods, watching the birds, listening to the rustling leaves. But life got busy with careers and family, and I forgot how calming it was. Now I wish I had ventured outside more, just to breathe deeply and feel the ground under my feet." Byock often emphasizes how nature uniquely helps individuals return to themselves, slow their racing minds, and regain perspective. He maintains that spending time outdoors fosters a connection to life that little else can replicate. Sarah, a woman in her early 50s, had been an avid gardener. She found joy in nurturing flowers, tending her vegetable beds, and witnessing the miracle of growth. But over time, her attention shifted. She became ensnared by her career and family obligations, and the time once spent outdoors diminished. The bond she had shared with nature was replaced by anxiety, deadlines, and mounting stress. When Sarah entered hospice care, she confided in her nurse, Maya, "I always believed I would return to gardening and outdoor living, but it never happened. Now I deeply regret not slowing down and dedicating more time to it. Nature was my therapy. It grounded me, connected me to something genuine." Sarah's regret was not tied to extravagant vacations or adventures. It was about the small, meaningful encounters with nature that she had forsaken. The melodies of birds, the sensation of soil between her fingers, the quiet satisfaction of watching plants blossom, those were her true sources of peace, and she had let them slip away. The healing force of nature. Why it matters. Nature offers something that modern living often denies: stillness. In nature, there is no rush, no deadlines, no urgent emails demanding a response. There's only you and the vast, beautiful world, unfolding in its own rhythm. Whether it's taking a gentle walk in the woods, sitting by a tranquil stream, or gazing up at the starlit sky, nature has a singular ability to help us reconnect with our inner selves. The peace nature offers is not merely a luxury, it is essential to our overall wellness. Numerous studies reveal that time spent in natural settings reduces anxiety, enhances mental clarity, and fosters better physical health. Yet, in the chaotic flow of modern life, many people disregard this essential source of strength. They forego the quiet, restorative moments that nature abundantly provides. If there is one crucial lesson to draw from the regrets of those nearing death, it is that nature is a precious gift we cannot afford to neglect. The earth offers us beauty, comfort, and a profound sense of belonging, and it patiently waits for us to take notice. Regret number 8. I wish I had taken more risks. As we approach the final chapters of our lives, we often find ourselves contemplating the choices we wish we had made differently. One of the most frequent regrets expressed by those nearing death is that they didn't embrace more risks. But not the reckless, spur-of-the-moment type of risks. Rather, they mourn not taking bold, transformative chances. The kind that might have unlocked new possibilities, created fresh opportunities, and infused their lives with more excitement. People lament the dreams they deferred, the career shifts they never attempted, the adventures they avoided due to fear, and the relationships they failed to pursue because they were too frightened of rejection. Reflecting back, many admit they would have preferred confronting failure directly rather than carrying the burden of endless what-ifs throughout their lives. David, a man in his early 50s, had devoted nearly 3 decades to a corporate career that left him feeling unfulfilled. He was competent, certainly, but his work was never his true passion. He had long envisioned opening a small, welcoming cafe where he could serve his community and share his love of cooking. Yet, David never made the leap. Instead, he remained in a job that, while reliable, never made him feel fully alive. As David's health began to falter, he started to look back on his choices. He confided in his hospice nurse, Rachel, that fear of failure had always held him back. "I kept telling myself I'd do it someday," he said. "I didn't want to jeopardize everything for something so uncertain. But now I realize that by avoiding the risk, I avoided really living. I spent my whole life working a job I didn't love, and now I'll never know what it might have felt like to follow my dream." David's story is heartbreakingly familiar. Countless people spend their lives prioritizing security, held captive by the fear of failure. Yet in the end, it's rarely the failures they mourn. It's the missed dreams, the unexplored paths, and the risks they never dared to take. Emily, a devoted mother of 2, dedicated the majority of her life to caring for her children, consistently putting their needs ahead of her own desires. She had always dreamed of traveling the world, discovering new cultures, and witnessing new landscapes. But the thought of leaving her family behind, even temporarily, filled her with anxiety. She convinced herself it wouldn't be responsible. Her children were growing fast, and her work as a teacher consumed much of her energy. As Emily lay resting in a hospice bed, her nurse, Samantha, spent an afternoon sitting by her side. "I always dreamed of traveling," Emily said softly, "but I never made it happen. I was too afraid to leave, too worried it would seem selfish. The unknown scared me." Samantha listened intently as Emily continued. "Now I realize I could have experienced so much more. I should have dared to take those risks. I should have shown my children that it's brave to follow your dreams, even when it's frightening. I longed to see the world, but I let fear chain me down." Regret number 9. I wish I had listened more and spoken less. As life approaches its conclusion, many individuals reflect on how they engaged with others, and a common regret that surfaces wishing they had listened more and spoken less. Amid the rush of daily existence, it's easy to become consumed with our own thoughts and perspectives, assuming that what we have to say is the most crucial part of any conversation. Yet, when standing at life's final threshold, many realize that the true richness lies not in speaking, but in genuinely listening. At the twilight of their journeys, people often recognize the moments they were too eager to talk, too busy crafting their response, rather than earnestly absorbing what the other person was expressing. They come to understand that genuine connection stems not from having the perfect reply, but from sincerely hearing and empathizing with others, without the urge to react immediately. They realize that sometimes simply being fully present and offering a receptive ear holds far more power than any words they might have uttered. John, a man in his late 70s, had devoted most of his career to the corporate sector, where his achievements depended heavily on his ability to speak persuasively and assertively. As a senior executive, he was often the dominant voice in meetings, constantly strategizing about what he would say next, rather than truly listening to his peers. As John's life neared its end, he began revisiting the quality of his relationships. He confided in his hospice nurse, Maggie, "I spent decades talking, striving to make my point, working to be heard. But now, I see that I should have spent far more time listening. I interrupted people without realizing their words were just as meaningful as mine. If I had listened more deeply, perhaps I would have understood them better. And perhaps they would have felt more valued." John's regret was not about speaking too little. It was that, in his haste to be understood, he missed countless opportunities to truly connect with those around him. He acknowledged that in his pursuit of being heard, he had underestimated the profound importance of attentive listening. Lydia, a beloved teacher for over 3 decades, was celebrated for her gift of engaging her students. She could deliver a lecture that captivated an entire classroom, but when it came to attentively listening to her loved ones, especially her family, she often struggled. She was quick to offer advice, eager to provide solutions, but seldom paused to truly understand what others were sharing. As she aged and faced significant health struggles, she began to reassess her relationships. One evening, confiding in her hospice nurse, Laura, Sarah admitted, "I was always so quick to talk, so ready to tell others what they should do. But I didn't listen enough. I didn't slow down to genuinely hear my husband, my children, or my friends. Now I realize that the most meaningful thing I could have done was to sit quietly and just listen." Lydia's regret was unmistakable. She recognized that she had missed deeper emotional bonds because she hadn't allowed others the space to fully express themselves. Her impulse to fix things, to always have an answer, often overshadowed the simple but powerful act of being present with empathy. Dr. Ira Byock on the transformative power of listening. Dr. Ira Byock recalls one of his patients, Tom, a man in his 80s, who reflected on how his relationships had been strained by his tendency to dominate conversations. "I've always been a man of action, full of words. I believed I had the answers for everyone. But as my days come to a close, I see now that the best thing I could have offered was to listen. I wish I had been more patient, allowing others the chance to speak without cutting them off. There's profound wisdom in silence. But I was too busy filling it." Dr. Byock highlights how transformative authentic listening can be for emotional health and for fostering deeper connections. For many of his patients, some of their most poignant regrets revolve around missed chances to truly hear and understand those they cherished. Linda, a proud mother and grandmother, had long been the center of her family's universe. She was a vibrant, strong-willed woman who wasn't shy about sharing her views. Yet when it came to her children and grandchildren, she often dominated the dialogue, convinced that her experiences and advice were exactly what they needed. During her time in hospice care, Linda began to reflect on her family relationships. She confided in her nurse, Rachel, "I always felt I had something important to say. I thought I was helping, but now I see how often I didn't truly listen to my kids. They needed me to hear their hearts, not just offer my advice. I wish I had given them more room to speak, to share their struggles and dreams without immediately adding my own perspective." Linda came to understand that, in her eagerness to guide, she had missed precious opportunities for her loved ones to fully voice themselves. She wished she had spent more time listening to their hopes and fears, rather than always positioning herself as the one with the answers. True listening is harder than it appears. Often, we believe we are listening, when in reality, we're simply waiting for our own turn to speak. Without active listening, we miss the emotions and depth that lie behind someone's words. And within relationships, this disconnect can lead to misunderstandings, wounded feelings, and lost opportunities for genuine closeness. In today's fast-moving world, we are conditioned to constantly engage, to offer our views, to solve problems. But sometimes, the greatest gift we can give another is our full presence, to listen attentively, without the pressure to immediately respond or advise. The next time you find yourself in a conversation, take a breath and truly listen. Don't formulate your reply while the other is speaking. Don't rush to fix things. Just be there. Listen for the emotions underneath the words. It's in these quiet, attentive moments that real connection is born, when we allow someone to be fully seen and heard, free from judgment. Ultimately, those who look back and wish they had listened more are not just reflecting on family ties, they are reconsidering how they engaged with the world itself. Listening is a profound gift we offer not only to others, but also to ourselves. It deepens our understanding, strengthens our connections, and allows us to experience life on a richer, more compassionate level. Having the opportunity to say a heartfelt goodbye is profoundly healing, not only for the one departing, but also for those who remain. Dr. Laura frequently advises the families of her patients to foster open conversations and seek closure, even when it feels challenging. A proper farewell can mend old hurts, grant forgiveness, and offer deep peace. I've witnessed families unite in the final moments of a loved one's life, and it truly changes everything. These are not merely regrets, they serve as powerful reminders. We don't have to wait until life's final chapters to begin living meaningfully. We can decide here and now to speak with honesty, to forgive freely, to laugh fully, and to live in alignment with our true selves. So, take a moment, look around you. Begin making the choices today that your future self will one day be grateful for. Thank you.